Hello everyone and welcome back to my bookish channel. Today I thought I would do that thing that I tried, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, where I dipped into the huge to be read mountain on the top of our stairs. There's a mass of pulpy paperbacks, B format books that I've collected over the years from all sorts of genres, and sometimes they get overlooked. As I build up these huge stacks, they get overlooked in favour of newer books that come in. And actually, I've got this wonderful collection of books in science fiction, romance, crime, tie-ins, kids' books, all these things that are heaped there, and I hardly ever make a dent into them. I go through phases of digging them all out and reading a whole, and blitzing on them. But I guess because I keep rescuing these things, because I know these are the things that get binned when people donate books to charity shops, or when you see things turn up on car boot sales or second-hand shops. These mass market paperbacks are things that are disappearing. They're never going to be back and they won't be reprinted, so I feel as if I'm rescuing them all the time. Anyway, I did a thing a few weeks ago, I don't know when I did the kind of marry, snog, avoid of books. My version is you have 3 piles and you have definitely, maybe, never. That's what we'll call it. Definitely, maybe, never. I've done this before where I think I read 10 pages of books to find out what I want to read next. And I found that by doing it again and again, going through maybe 10 books and reading 10 pages, I could make these 3 piles, definitely, maybe, never. And I found consistently that half of books, I think, no, was it thirds? Doesn't matter. The majority of things, I realised I'm never going to finish this. There was a third that was definite. And actually doing the definitely, maybe, never really worked in terms of just getting rid of things that I wasn't going to like in the end. It was a good test. Since then, I've been doing this thing of the spot check, of reading the back, reading the first paragraph from the middle. So I'm going to try that with this. I've taken a pile of things from the To Be Read mountain. It's not really a mountain, it's 2 glass cabinets from a hairdresser's where they put all of the supplies of hairspray and, I don't know, shampoo or whatever, things that they want you to buy in a salon. And we ended up with them. We bought them, I think, from something online. And they're stacked with paperbacks inside, but there's paperbacks on top and around them. And so you have to work to get inside these glass cabinets right now. But I have done, and I've got a heap of things in different genres. So I'm going to go through them. Right, this is the Sorcerer's Ship. This was something I got from eBay, I think, and I forget what the connection was. Hannes Bock, A Tale of Wonders by a Master Sorcerer. I must have been reading something about epic fantasy of a certain era. This looks like it's the 70s, I guess. Oh no! Republished in 69, but it's from 42. Yep. Not that I can tell by smell when things come from, but it smells like second-hand bookshops in the 1970s. Right, on the back it says, if Hannes Bock was primarily an artist rather than a writer, it's surely because the one activity left him little time for the other. But since he saw with an artist's eye and blah, 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 prismatic, jeweled prose, imagery, there's nothing telling you what it's about. Always annoys me. This is Pan. Picador are the worst for this, who never tell you what a book's about. They just give you everybody's opinions about the writer on the back. So there's a long intro. Oh, I think this was really good, the intro. I've read the intro to this. And it's about the 60s, or the 40s writers of weird fantasy in the, in New York. I've got to reread this properly. But that's not, well, it is to do the book. It's an intro by Lynn Carter. I'll read you the first paragraph or so. Okay. The nightmare ended, but the rocking sensation persisted. There was a curious glassy sound, like the clinking of many bottles. He was only conscious of intense pain, his body burning as though he had been scalded and whipped. His eyes were closed, but searing light wedged under their inflamed lids. It was an effort to open them. He was as weak as if one of the vampires of his delirium had drained away all his strength and left him dying. He blinked in pain, attempted to lift a feeble hand protectively to his face, could not, and shut his eyes again. Hot sunlight pressed down on him like an incandescent weight. And where was he? I'm not sure I care. Right, dip into the middle. I wonder if he did the cover then. It's a lovely cover. That's proper, kind of slightly naive epic fantasy. Like those kind of 60s pictures of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit before these things became, before the film versions of these things became kind of definitive. Right, dipping in at random. Siwara examined the effigy wonderingly for perhaps the 20th time. When it first reached the ship, its clay had been wet, as though it had been freshly made, but now as it dried it was stiffening. Beautifully modelled, it was human in shape, but yet something more than human. Its hands and feet were webbed, the fingers and toes lengthened into pointed claws, and minute lines cross-hatched the legs and torso, suggesting tiny scales. Its eyes were immense, round and staring, and instead of hair, its head bore a finny crest over which Siwara puzzled. "It looks human," she said, "and yet it looks like a fish. If it is an idol of some sort, I do not know of the god that it represents. Caspel, do you?" The old man slowly shook his head, pursing his lips as he referred to his knowledge of all things pantheistic. Oh, I don't know. It sounds a bit dull. Right, moving on quickly. That's going to go in maybe for now. Hermann Hesse, The Glass Bead Game. I've never read this. I don't know if I've read any Hermann Hesse at all. He's somebody we have in various forms. I think Jeremy's read him, so we have various books around the house. Okay, on the back it says, "The Glass Bead Game is an ultra-aesthetic game which is played by the scholars, creamed off in childhood and nurtured in elite schools in the province of Castalia. The master of the glass bead game, Joseph Knecht, holds the most exalted office in Castalia. He personifies the detachment, serenity, and aesthetic vision." It's a dull blurb. Right, I'm going to find the beginning and give you it's a long introduction, as puffins of a certain age often had. Right, first paragraph from chapter 1, The Call. No knowledge has come down to us of Joseph Knecht's origins. Like many of the pupils of the elite schools, he either lost his parents early in childhood, or the Board of Educators removed him from unfavourable home conditions and took charge of him. In any case, he was spared the conflict between elite school and home, which complicates the youth of many other boys of his type, makes entry into the order more difficult, and in some cases transforms highly gifted young people into problem personalities. Knecht was one of those fortunates who had been born for Costalia, for the order, and for service in the Board of Educators. Although he was not spared the perplexities of life, of the mind, it was given to him to experience without personal bitterness the tragedy inherent in every life consecrated to thought. I'm going to dip in at random. I'm not mad about this. Maybe I'm being too cursory. Knecht followed this advice and soon began feeling more relaxed. Hitherto, he had been thinking too much of his assignment to act as instructor to amateur glass bead game players, the ostensible reason for his mission here, whereas the fathers of the monastery were treating him rather as the envoy of a friendly power who must be kept in good humour. And when at last Abbot Gervasius recollected the assignment and brought him together with several of the monks who had already had an introduction to the art of the glass bead game and hoped he would give them a more advanced course, it turned out to his astonishment and his intense disappointment that the noble game was cultivated in a most superficial and amateurish way at this hospitable place. He would evidently have to content himself with a very modest level of knowledge of the game. Slowly, though, he came to realize that he had not really been sent here for the sake of lifting the standards of the glass bead game in the monastery. The assignment of coaching the few fathers moderately devoted to the game and equipping them with a modest degree of skill was easy, much too easy. Any other adept at the game, even if he was still far from belonging to the elite, would have been equal to the task. Instruction, then, could not be the real purpose of his mission. He began to realize that he had been sent here less to teach than to learn. That's interesting. It was an interesting random choice because it seems like a kind of a crux, a turning point in the book. But, it feels a bit dusty to me. And all about subterfuge of a very particular kind. Gameplay, literal gameplay, which is the kind of intrigue that brings some people in, but not really me. People being Machiavellian. Somebody once told me that I had to be more Machiavellian in order to get what I wanted at work, and I was appalled. The idea that that's what people did, pretending to play one game while playing another. Somebody else once said they always had Plan B, and that astonished me as well. I think I'm just guileless. So books like that, written so coolly about people, I suppose he's the victim of subterfuge, or a pawn, a pawn in subterfuge. That kind of stuff leaves me cold a bit, really. Right, this is Judith Kelman. Maybe this is more my thing. Proper pulp, ghosty horror. While Angels Sleep, a 1980s kind of paperbacks, 90s, paperbacks from hell type book. Strange, terrible things had happened at Thornwood years ago when Emily was just a child. First there was her mother's sudden tragic death, then her father's slow, agonizing descent into madness, and finally the horror had ended, or so Emily thought. Now, years later, she's come back with children of her own. Back to the dark, wooded seclusion of the old art colony. Back to Thornwood, where the sins of the past are still lingering in the shadows, blah, 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 hanging tree, lurking in the hallways of the... Sorry, burping. The burp isn't part of the blurb. Chapter 1. Here's the beginning. They called it the Hanging Tree, overblown, important name for a clumsy old swamp maple with gnarled, obese branches and bark gone dry and patchy from a century of raging tree ailments. It stood in all of its dubious arthritic splendour at the entrance to the Thornwood Foundation, the artists' colony my father had founded and run for over 30 years until he died last spring. A short, snappy beginning. Paragraph. At random then. Okay. Granny followed, fussed over the napkins, and rearranged the silverware in military rows. Now then, Emily, don't tell me you're one of those sensitive types who can't stand a friendly little suggestion now and then. I only meant... Lynch's arrival was timed to perfection. Granny lapsed into a strained, tight-lipped welcome silence as soon as he walked through the front door. She gave him a killing look and went to call the boys in from the backyard for dinner. I helped serve. Today's casserole was brown. Beneath the usual camouflage, there was a clotted mass of hard-boiled noodles and chunks of greasy meat in a dilute cordovan gravy. Small army drab orbs and chunky gelatinous red masses floated in the muck, clinging to stray noodle tendrils for dear life. I took a polite serving, confident that I could tuck what I couldn't stomach under the lettuce leaves for discreet disposal later on. Well, call me tacky, but that hideous description of first the tree and then this hideous casserole has me gripped. It's somebody at least enjoying what they're writing. So Judith Kelman goes on my, what is it, definite, maybe, never. That's one of each so far. Here's The Adventures of Jules de Grandin, by Seabury Quinn. Again, an introduction by Lynn Carter. Look at that cover. There's King Kong, a giant squid, a cityscape, and a fellow with a gun, and bats, and the moon. The occult, Hercule Poirot. Journey into the fantastic and terrifying worlds of the unknown. The great supernatural sleuth of them all battles the most fiendish creatures ever to haunt the earth. Jules de Grandin, who reigned as king in the golden age of strange stories and weird tales, is back to delight readers of today. Long out of print, these stories of his adventures mark the return of the eeriest spellbinding action entertainment. Eeriest spellbinding action entertainment ever. To startle, shock, and send shivers down your spine. What a blurb. This is... When's it from? So they're older, aren't they? They're from the... This is 76, but they came from the 20s. They came from the 1920s. I'm going to read the beginning. I'm going to skip Lynn Carter's introduction and Seabury Quinn's introduction and read the beginning of Terror on the Links. It must have been past midnight when the skirling of my bedside telephone awakened me, for I could see the moon well down toward the horizon as I looked through the window while reaching for the instrument. Dr. Trowbridge, an excited voice, bored through the receiver. This is Mrs. Maitland. Can you come over right away? Something dreadful has happened to Paul. Eh? I answered, half asleep. What's wrong? We don't know, she replied jerkily. He's unconscious. You know, he's been to the dance at the country club with Gladys Phillips, and we'd been in bed for hours when we heard someone banging on the door. Mr. Maitland went down, and when he opened the door, Paul fell into the hall. Oh, doctor, he's been hurt dreadfully. Won't you please come right over? Well, it's not much yet, but I will dip into the middle. Tomorrow, when you have a chance to leave this vestibule of hell, you go to the place where these fruits like apples grow, and gather as many of them as you can carry in your sarong. Bring these fruits to the what? Cocculus indicus. Oh, these fruits of the Cocculus indicus to your house, and mash them to a pulp in some jar which you must procure. At the dinner hour, pour the contents of that jar into the water where dwells the devil fish. Do not fail us, my little pigeon, for upon your faithful performance of your trust our lives and yours depend, pardieu. If you do not carry out your orders, we shall feed that Monsieur Octopus such a meal as you will have a small belly for, Pablo. When you've poured all the crushed fruit into the water, secrete yourself in the shadows nearby and wait till we come. You can swim? Good. When we do leap into the water, do you leap also? And altogether we shall swim to that boat I was about to borrow. When we met, this so excellent Monsieur Gounong Bissard James Abingdon Richardson Devil. Cordieu, I think that Jules de Grandin is not such a fool as I thought he was. Good night, fairest one, and may the God of your people, and the gentle Mary too, guard you this night and all the nights of your life. This is bonkers. I'm putting that on maybe, but it's bonkers. Right, Iris Rayner Dart, who wrote Beaches, one of my favourites and one of my favourite films. And there's a quote on the back from Bette Midler. So it's about soap opera. Jan is nearing 50 and considering a facelift. Ellen fought her way to the top of a Hollywood studio only to face menopause jokes from her male colleagues. Rose, so it's like First Wives Club or a kind of Jacqueline Suzanne type novel. Okay, so it's Hollywood. First paragraph of the whole book. Chapter 1. Look up, sweetheart, look up. That's it. Now, I'll just add a little more concealer under the eyes and you'll be all set. Bert, the makeup man, was wearing too much Royal Line cologne, and Jan didn't have the heart to tell him that, at this hour in the morning, the thick, tangy scent made her nauseous. As soon as I finish this, I'll whisk a little mascara on your lashes, and then you can take the rollers out and get your hair combed. Bert's face was so close to her that while he patted the creamy cover-up under her lower lashes, she could smell the tic-tac he held in his mouth as an antidote to coffee breath, sometimes even while he was still drinking the coffee. But it was Bert's constant barrage of chatter, always in the form of well-meant advice that got to her. Why couldn't I pronounce the word? I still can't. Right, I'm going to dip into the middle. Well, I'm sorry to say this, Ellen, Norman said, but that's just not going to happen. And then he was quiet. What did he mean? What wasn't going to happen? Did he mean I wasn't going to get the job of Worldwide Pictures? Had his voices told him? What isn't going to happen, Norman? I asked, trying to sound patient and not patronising. Why, I wondered, did I ever tell Norman Braverman it was all right to call me? Why was I having this bizarre telephone conversation with someone who was now going to insult me while I was feeling rotten enough already? The job at Worldwide isn't going to happen, Norman said. I mean, it's nothing personal, Ellen. You'd be good in the job. It's just that there are too many people in that department already, and Peter Goldman can't make a decision because he won't even be there next month. And neither will Harvey Springer. How on earth would you know that? I asked him. And I almost laughed as I did, because I knew this conversation was in the same category as the one about chicken soup from Barbara. But I think I would read more of that, and I'm not even sure why. I think because it's like gossip. It's like somebody talking straight to you. I'm going to do one more. This is Emma Blair, who wrote sagas in, I think, the 80s and 90s. And this is 2003. And I believe Emma Blair was a pen name for a male writer. So I'm interested in this for obvious reasons, because of my own pen name. Right, 1920s Glasgow. Happiness can be hard to find. It's called Finding Happiness. Sandy McLean's life changes the moment he meets Sophie, French, sophisticated and beautiful. She is a model at the local art school, a glamorous world away from Sandy's training to become a surgeon. So when Sandy rescues her from the unwelcome advances of a drunk, he hopes it's the start of something special. So, Glasgow and Paris. Chapter 1. Sandy McLean glanced up from the book he was studying when there was a soft, tentative tap on his bedroom door. He frowned at the interruption. Come in. It was his younger sister, Laura, who entered, her expression one of uncertainty. Am I disturbing you? Sandy sighed. Of course, she bloody well was. That's all right, he declared magnanimously. I was about to take a break anyway. That was a lie. He waved in the direction of the bed. Take a pew. I think one of the things I'm looking for when I dip into things at the beginning and the middle is to do with the rhythm of the prose. And that, to me, is as important as anything else. Can I stomach the kind of the sound of it, the rollicking gait of it, the pace of it, how much the ideas are compressed or how loose the writing is? It's a very indefinable thing, really, for me, because you've got to spend a long time listening to this stuff inside your head. And as I said, I read slowly. I read inside my head at the pace of reading aloud. I read at the pace of audiobooks. Okay. What are you doing here? Sophie appeared behind the bar to discover Sandy sitting at it. I couldn't wait till tonight. I had to see you now. Is something wrong? Sandy shook his head. Nothing at all. I just wanted to see you. How sweet, she thought. How very sweet. Well, now you're here. You'd better have a drink. It should have been coffee at that time in the morning, but he wanted something stronger to calm him a little. Thinking about Sophie had filled him with a burning frustration at having to get through the entire day before their rendezvous at her place. A large whiskey, please. Sophie raised a well-plucked eyebrow, but didn't comment. Oui, monsieur. He was in love with her, Sophie realised, which pleased her to a certain extent. On the other hand, it could complicate matters, as she had no intention of falling in love with him. She liked him, yes, and was prepared to use him for sex, but that's as far as it went. Besides, she'd intended returning to Montmartre she'd given up all hope of Jack coming back to her. She took the money and handed over and rang it up on the till, acutely aware of his gaze following her every move. There you are, she declared, laying his change beside the glass she'd already placed on the bar. You're lovely, he whispered. Well, that goes in my pile that's definitely worth looking at again. I seem to have chosen the cheesiest ones. That's really funny. Maybe the cheesiest ones. Out of these 6, no is Hermann Hesse. I'm sorry, maybe I should apply myself more to reading contemporary classics, Penguin modern classics, but that left me cold. Jules de Grandin seemed a bit crazy. Maybe I should try harder, but it's in maybe. The Sorcerer's Ship didn't grab me at all, apart from the cover, and that memory of the wonderful introduction by Lynn Carter, which describes science fiction writers and their kind of quarrels and their love affairs and their knowing each other in a certain time in history. The pulpy horror of Judith Kelman appealed. The schlocky showbiz of Iris Rayner Dart appealed. And this slightly racy art school world saga set in the 20s also appealed. So I just think my tastes are tacky. I think I must be in the mood for kind of robust storytelling, books that kind of drag you in and won't let you go, not books that you have to battle your way in to feel engaged with. That's where I'm at. Right, so I think the proportions are still the same. Half I would definitely read, a third I would get rid of, and I can't do fractions, can I? Half I would definitely read and half are questionable. I'll do this again. I think this is interesting. I hope it's interesting to you, but this is way over length, and I will see you again soon in the next episode. Goodbye.